Now, many of us usually think of Ramadan as just refraining from food and water. Well, especially those that are not of the Islamic faith anyways. But it's more than just refraining from food and water. There are many other components that are involved with the month of Ramadan. And by this, we are going to ask one of our guest speakers to come up and explain about the various aspects of Ramadan. Before I invite him, I'll just explain a bit about him. It is Omar Atilla Erge. He is a theologian and a lecturer at the Center of Islamic Studies and Civilization at Charles Sturt University. He has also been on the editorial board of various Islamic magazine publications. Omar has been involved with the Islamic sciences since 1990 and has taught Islam in various study circles since 1995. Omar has published 6 books and has also edited another 16 on various topics such as the existence of God, purpose of life, and the life of the Sahaba. He has also set an excellent example of serving the community for decades. So I'd like to welcome Omar to give us a talk about the significance of Ramadan.
Okay. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. It's nice to see you here. Thank you for joining us tonight. I don't think any words will be any value after that beautiful Quranic recitation. We heard the Kalamullah and brother's voice was mashallah too. It was really good. But since I have been given the duty of saying few things tonight, inshallah, I'll fulfill that duty. And what I'm going to talk about tonight is mainly about some of the different aspects of Ramadan. And it's good that it coincided with tonight as well. As you know, it's Bara'at tonight, the night of Bara'at. It has a special significance. There are strong hadiths about the night of Bara'at. There are also some scholarly views that imply the Quran as its entirety was brought down to the skies, to the heavens on this night. And on the night of Qadr, it began to be revealed. So it is a special night. Inshallah, we will evaluate as well, and we will make the most of it, inshallah. So why a month like Ramadan? The term Ramadan comes from the root word Ramad, which means dry heat. As you know, it's a month in the Islamic calendar. As in Arabia, the 9th month of the lunar calendar coincided to July and August, and it was really hot. Because of this, the solar calendar that we use currently, the month of Ramadan moves back each year 10 days, about 10 days. So it coincides with all months with us. In Islamic theology, Ramadan is much more than just a month in the calendar. This is very important. So what is so significant about Ramadan? Well, there's a big list there, as you can see. It is the month of the Quran. One of the main significances there. It is a month of ibadah, worship. It is a month of Sawm, fasting. It is a month of shukr, thanksgiving. It is a month of self-discipline and resolutions. It is a month of spirituality and taming the nafs, the carnal desires, the carnal soul. It is a month of empathy, charity, giving, and sharing. It's also a month of social interaction. So it has many, many different aspects. Ramadan is the month in which the Quran was revealed. The Quran itself says this. شهر رمضان الذي أنزل فيه القرآن. So it makes this month the month of the Quran. The Quran says in this month there are clear signs that separate haq, the truth, from batil, falsehood. And it was revealed for human beings, so it can be a guidance. There are many narrations about the virtues of reciting the Quran during the month of Ramadan. But of course, the most famous would be Muqabala. As you know, the noble Prophet ﷺ would recite the Quran each year to an audience as well, so they, make sure that the copies they have were correct and everything, but also to Jibril ﷺ. And in the last year before the Prophet passed away, ﷺ, he recited it twice with Jibril, and that was one of the signs that he was about to depart this transient, this temporary world. Fasting during Ramadan is a pillar of Islam. There's no doubt about this. It's one of the pillars. It is an obligatory act upon all Muslims who are over the age of adolescence and are able to do so, to fast during the month of Ramadan, if your health permits you to do it as well. There are certain conditions, as you know, in fiqh that you can postpone it, or if you're unhealthy to fulfill that, there are other things that you can do. Pay ransom and things like that. Fasting is a unique form of worship, unlike any other worship, which has allocated rewards. If you look at all other forms of worship in Islam, they all have allocated rewards. The rewards of fasting even baffles the angels. This is very important, because they say that even throughout the year when you recite the Quran, for each letter you receive a reward of 10 points, 10 rewards, because this is what this life is all about. It's a testing. خَلَقَ الْمَوْتَ وَالْحَيَاةَ لِيَبْلُوَكُمْ أَيُّكُمْ أَحْسَنُ عَمَلًا. We are being tested here. So with every amal, we either get a good deed written or a bad deed written. However, as I mentioned before, reciting the Quran, scholars say you get 10 rewards for each letter. But what happens when you fast? Fasting is different. When the faster is observing the fast during Ramadan, it is reported that angels get confused about what to write down. So they ask the Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what should we put down? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, leave that blank. I will personally reward them. Even the angels do not know the amount. Perhaps one of the main reasons for this is there can be no ostentation or flamboyance in fasting. There can be no showing off in fasting. No one is going to go hungry and without water all day so they can just show off. But you can do this in other ibadats, except in fasting. Or, for example, the night prayer, tahajjud. No one would do that as well, just so they can show off. They're all by themselves in the middle of the night. So, in that regards, fasting has unique rewards. And inshallah, Ramadan is approaching anyway, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will personally allocate our rewards during the month of Ramadan. Ramadan is also a month of shukr, which is thanksgiving. It's a month of shukr and hamd, as it is a month in which the value of rizq, sustenance, nima, realized more than at any time. Recognizing the value of rizq leads to acknowledgement of the razzaq, the hand that gives the rizq, and in return, what you do is you become grateful, thankful. You show hamd and shukr towards the hand that gives it to you. Interestingly, throughout the year, we all have carnal desires and souls, the nafs, and you cannot trust the nafs, as Yusuf alayhi salam says in the Quran as well. Inna an-nafsa la amwaratu bis-su'i illa ma rahima rabbi. So the nafs thinks or assumes that it can consume whatever it wishes. It does not think about when it reaches to something, because that ability to do whatever it wishes gradually develops the feeling within the nafs that it feels some form of lordship in itself, rububiyyah in itself. But when the Ramadan comes, everything suddenly changes. the nafs realizes that it has no lordship at all. In fact, it is an impotent, weak servant. There is a famous story which most of you may have heard about, a narration when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created the nafs. In the first instant, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asked it, "Who are you and who am I?" And the nafs, through arrogance, replied, "Anta, anta, ana, ana." It's a famous thing. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded his angels to punish the nafs. It was thrown into hellfire for a certain period of time and was brought back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala again before him. And the question was repeated, the arrogance had not gone. Similar answer, anta, anta, ana, ana. You are you, I am me. And after the third occasion, according to the narration, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, starve it. Don't give it any risk. Once the nafs went through this testing, the same question was asked, and the nafs said, "Ana abdika al-ajiz wa anta arhamur rahimin." I am your impotent servant, and you are my merciful Lord. If you look at this world with 8 million different species living on it, you will see that, you watch it all the time, you know, on documentaries like David Attenborough and them. It is always about filling this tiny stomach. Everything in this world is chasing their sustenance. Unfortunately, man and woman, human beings who have this intellect, it's one of the greatest gifts in the universe by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is a requirement to think as well. We only see what appears in front of the veil, but we do not recognize and see the hand that gives it, sends this to us. And months like Ramadan allow us to recognize this. Then what happens is, even a morsel of bread, one glass of water, we realize its value. And this leads to true shukr, thankfulness, gratitude, and praise. So, within Ramadan, I jumped one, I think, here. So, Ramadan is a month also in which we learn self-discipline and resolutions. It's a month of self-discipline because it is like a rehabilitation period for us, where the observer learns to control his or her physical impulses, desires, emotions, and anger. As the MC mentioned before, most people think, in particular non-believers or non-Muslims think that way as well. They think Ramadan is all about just starving yourself, staying away from, food and water and things like that. Whereas this is, according to narration or scholarly views, is the level of awam. The average people, they will stay away just from food and water. But we have to understand that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not need a hunger or starvation at all. In fact, they say a higher level of fasting is not only staying away from just water and drinks or food, it is to refrain from all unwanted acts, all types of unwanted acts. In fact, scholars at that level, they say that during Ramadan, we should be fasting not with our mouth and the stomachs, but all of our limbs. The eyes should be turned away from all haram. The hands should be pulled away from all sorts of unlawful things. The feet should always direct to the place of worship. Now, there is a higher level than that as well. There are people not only who fast with their limbs as well, they fast with their hearts and mind as well. So even thinking about unlawful things does not cross their hearts or minds as well. So there are different levels of fasting. So when we look at all these descriptions there, you will see that Ramadan is not just about remaining hunger and without water. In fact, there are psychological sides to it as well. Like, for example, Ramadan encourages people to control their anger, for example, to refrain from conflicts, arguments, fights, and things like that. So it is a period of actually self-development, self-discipline. In fact, the objective of this self-discipline process through the obligatory worship is to emulate the angels. What does that mean? We know that angels, angelic beings, do not eat, drink, or reproduce. So in a way, during Ramadan, believers, Muslims, refrain from animalistic desires. They move into a phase of spiritual existence where the flesh does not have any meaning anymore. In a way, they are emulating or imitating the angels, becoming angelic beings. Or they are trying to transform themselves into an angelic being. Ramadan is, this is very important as well, it is also a month of resolutions. Because at the beginning and the end of the month should have significant changes on the observer. So what does that mean? A person begins the Ramadan differently and should end Ramadan differently, as a different person. His or her habits, acts, behavior, and attitude should evolve and change by the end of Ramadan. That will mark that a person has observed Ramadan correctly and the way it should have been observed. In fact, in summary, at the end of Ramadan, a person should become a better person. This is what the real aim is here. So it is a month of spirituality and taming the nafs, we said. Ramadan is a month of spirituality because it is a month of worship. Everything increases during the Ramadan. They say the greatest of the devils, Satans, are put into chains. They are tied up. You still have a shaitan to fight with, which is your nafs, but the big ones, the main ones, are all tied up. So this gives you more opportunity to practice and worship better, get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, achieve proximity to Him. In fact, sometimes I actually observe this with my own eyes. I remember some years ago when I was in my country, there was this famous marketplace. I come from a city called Izmir, and there's a place called Kemeraltı. It's very famous. Thousands of people are there every day. And there used to be one person there who was always drunk throughout the year. You see him sitting on the floor, rolling down, always drunk, except for Ramadan. Suddenly you see this person with a nice suit coming to the mosque and praying. And I used to say, the shaitans must be tied up at the moment, because it shows its effects on people. And there are also research based on this, that during Ramadan, in Muslim nations, crime rates fall to very minimum levels. It's been proven. There are research based on this. So, in regards to worship, human beings were created for the sole purpose of worshiping God anyway. وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُوا. That's the objective of our creation anyway. So Ramadan is the best month for this. As along with fasting, nafile prayers, everything increases. Recitation of the Quran is in abundance as well. There is a very high level of reciting the Quran during Ramadan. And let me tell you the advantages of that as well. Some scholars say, as throughout the year, you get normal rewards for your actions, for your good deeds. In the month of Rajab, this is multiplied by 100. And then during, it's all building up. It's like a stairway to heaven. In the month of Shaban, it is multiplied by 300. And in the month of Ramadan, it is multiplied by 1,000 rewards. Each deed, each good deed, 1,000 rewards. And on some nights, such as the Qadr, night of Qadr, it can be multiplied up to 30,000 rewards. So throughout Ramadan, you can actually attain the rewards of the hasana of a lifetime. A lifetime. It's a great opportunity. Also, when we talk about taming the nafs, I remember one story some years ago I heard from this Christian scholar. He was American. He said there was an Native American chief, you know, the American Indians. One day he called his son next to him and said to him, "Son, I have these two wolves inside of me. One is the bad wolf, the other one is the good wolf. They are constantly fighting each other in my soul." And his son said, "But Dad, who will win?" And the chief said, "The one you feed. The one you feed will win." And this, I think, that matches with Ramadan quite perfectly, because during Ramadan, the bad wolf is starving. The good wolf is being fed constantly with spirituality. So during Ramadan, through all of these acts, including fasting, we see a softening of the heart. The icebergs begin to melt. More remembrance of Allah, as this is the only thing that will satisfy a human being. أَلَا بِذِكْرِ اللَّهِ تَطْمَئِنُّ الْقُلُوبُ. Yeah? The hearts can only be satisfied with the remembrance of Allah. As a result, the nafs is tamed and trained to be obedient. Ramadan is also a month of empathy, charity, and giving and sharing. This is very important as well, because Ramadan is a month of empathy, because Muslims learn the difference between pity and empathy during Ramadan. And I can tell you this, there is a big difference between pity and empathy. Because pity means to feel sorry for someone who is in a bad situation, but because you do not experience what that person is experiencing, it does not entail an action. And there's a clear proof with countries like this, for example. Many times we see on our TVs, children like that starving in various parts of the world. But as soon as the advertising passes, we forget about it. That's a reality. But during Ramadan, whether you're wealthy, whether you're poor, male, female, young, old, it doesn't matter. When you actually feel the agony of starvation yourself, in particular if the days are long, when your lips start to dry up, when your stomach starts to rumble, then you realize how they feel. This is called empathy. And you become more charitable because you know what they feel. So there's a big difference between empathy and pity. So it is an emotion that we attain during Ramadan as well, empathy. And then, of course, we have the social interaction side of Ramadan, because it is a month of social interaction, as Muslims avoid having their iftar dinners by themselves. It's a reality. We do not want an empty table or a table that only belongs to us. We always invite people, our relatives, our neighbors, and sometimes non-Muslims as well. We see in this country quite frequently. There is always somebody on our table. I remember some years ago, on an iftar event like this, I spoke at the Victorian Parliament, and I gave one example there. They were very impressed about it. I thought I'd mention it here as well, and it was about Ibrahim alayhis salam. As you know, Ibrahim alayhis salam always had someone sitting on his dinner table. Always. He would not eat dinner without a guest. One night, according to a story, that he could not find anyone to invite. And he was depressed. He went into stress. And his wife, Sarah, said, "Oh, Ibrahim, why don't you go down to the marketplace? Maybe you might find someone to invite." And he said, "That's a good idea." He smiled. And he went down to the marketplace. People were heading home. He saw this old man, about the age of 80s, with long white beard. He approached him. He could see that he has been on a journey. He wasn't a local person. And he said, "Would you like to join me for dinner?" The man's eyes sparkled because he had not been eaten for 3 days. Was on a long journey. And he said, "I will accept, of course." So Ibrahim took him, and they are walking towards Ibrahim's alayhi salam house. On the way to the house, they started chatting, discussing certain issues. At one point, the Prophet asked the man, "Do you have beliefs? Do you believe in God?" And the man replied, "No, I don't believe in nothing." He was an atheist, non-believer. Ibrahim became disappointed. You can see it on his face. And then he said, "How can I allow a disbeliever to sit on the table of a prophet?" And he said, "I'm sorry. I cannot take you to my house." And the old man became very disappointed as he was hungry. He put his head down and he started walking away. At that point, according to the narration, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed a wahi to Ibrahim alayhi salam and said, "Oh Ibrahim, I have been feeding that person for 80 years. Are you reluctant to feed him for just one night?" Ibrahim alayhi salam realized his error. In judgment, he turned and grabbed the man by the hand and said, "Come with me, we're having dinner together." And after the dinner, the man embraced Iman because he realized how merciful the Lord of Ibrahim was. So Muslims traditionally invite their relatives, their friends, their neighbors, and even non-Muslims to their dinner tables in the month of Ramadan. They share the same food, interact with each other, and discuss each other's problems as well. And on that table, as you know, after fasting all day, people who sit there, there is no difference in their social status, there is no differences in rank. It doesn't matter. You all become one and break the bread together. This is quite significant. So the tradition of having people on your dinner table comes from, as I mentioned, Prophet Ibrahim, which is very famous, who had a guest on his dinner table each time it was time to eat. So that is the end of my speech tonight. Thank you for your time and thank you for listening. Inshallah, may you all have a very blessed Ramadan and may Allah accept your fasting and du'as and worship and praise. Thank you.
Okay, I'd like to thank our theologian and academic Omar Ergi for giving that lovely presentation. I don't know which part to say was the best, but I'll probably start off with the part where we're leading up onto Ramadan and the bonuses we get are multiplied by 1,000.